We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Hello and welcome to Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio America Network. I'm your host, Mark Angelides. On today's special show, we are talking the Epstein files, illegal immigration, and a whole lot more. It's going to be quite the show. Please remember, Liberty Nation Radio is sponsored by LibertyNation.com, where you can access podcasts, breaking news analysis, and a range of biting and brilliant shows to whet your appetite for freedom and your fondness for the great American Constitution. And you're on Liberty Nation Radio with your host, Mark Angelides. We're joined by Liberty Nation's chief political correspondent and satirist, Mr. Graham J. Noble. Thanks for joining us, Graham.
Thank you, Mark. Pleasure to be here.
So, Graham, the big hullabaloo that's been dogging the Trump administration for the last, it's a good few weeks now, is the Epstein saga, the Jeffrey Epstein saga. And it seems to me, and I'd like your analysis on this, because you've covered this whole saga on the page of libertynation.com so thoroughly that it seems to me that there's no external information. I mean, there could be coming out, of course, but it really encapsulates everything that's taking place. My conclusion from that is that this is a media-generated, quote, "we've got Trump this time" story, end quote. Graham, what's your take?
Well, I do think the Trump administration kind of, fumbled this one a little bit because after all, during the election last year, during the election campaign and also even in the early days of this administration, the American people were given the impression that this whole Epstein thing was going to get blown wide open, that, we were going to see the famous fabled client list. We were going to see all the documents and we were going to know who was involved. And then all of a sudden, first of all, they come out and say, well, this whole conspiracy about Jeffrey Epstein, not committing suicide. Yeah, that's nonsense. He did commit suicide, apparently, but which is what they're saying. I personally am still not convinced. And I'm sure a lot of people aren't either. But then, and then Pam Bondi pretty much comes out and says, well, oh yeah, those files I said I had on my desk. What files were they again? Oh, and I'm sure, that must have upset a lot of people in MAGA world would have been very upset about that, because all of a sudden it's a big disappointment. But apparently the polls don't reflect any major. It's not like Trump supporters are suddenly just throwing in the towel and saying that's it, I'm done with Trump because of the Epstein thing. So
it's funny it's funny that you say that, because there is a pervasive story within the more left-leaning fourth estate that MAGA world is abandoning Trump because he led them on this wild goose chase regarding Epstein. But then Harry Enton of CNN pointed out, based on one of their pollings, that it wasn't. They did what's your top issue with Donald Trump? And one respondent in the entire poll said the Epstein stuff was, and that's not 1%, as Enton pointed out. It was one person.
One person, yeah.
So I don't feel this is going to sink Donald Trump, but it does seem that it was a misstep that was so easily avoidable, and they tried to. And this is just opinion, of course, but it seems the Trump administration, including the president, tried to P.T. Barnum this whole thing, and they thought they could deliver something groundbreaking, and maybe it's just not the case, and they've kind of let everybody down with it. Now, fortunately, Trump's been keeping the, let's say, the news industry afloat with a lot of other things that are key for his supporters, but it really was a rare misstep, though, wasn't it? It was so out of character to be so off messaging and sort of dismissive of his base. It kind of surprised me in that.
I think it was really bad, and as you alluded to, Trump's own response to all of this was actually shocking, I thought. I mean, I think at one point he even said, look, if the people who are concerned about Epstein, I don't want those people as my supporters. It's have really,
that was almost a Clinton-esque mistake. Almost.
it was really bad. It was, I don't know what he was thinking when he said that. And true, look, the Epstein thing isn't the biggest issue we've got going on in America today. Not by a long shot, but nevertheless, this was a case of being, the Trump supporters were, basically Trump's team overpromised and underdelivered in a massive way. And I think it was really kind of shot themselves in the foot. I mean, of course, now the situation is that they've tried to backtrack it a bit. They've tried to do damage control by actually requesting that grand jury testimony is unsealed. And in fact, an Obama-appointed judge in Florida is the one who said, no, can't do that, not unsealing it. Which makes you wonder, the left loves to think that somehow, Trump is all intricately kind of tied into the whole Epstein sex crime thing, which of course, if he was, that stuff would have been out in the media years ago.
That's what.
And also, if he was, why did an Obama-appointed judge then not want to unseal this information if it was so damaging to Trump?
That's the thing that's so often overlooked. During Trump out of office, so January 19th, 2021, until he was back in office, January 20th, 2025. In all that time, pretty much every law enforcement agency you could shake a stick at was filing something against Donald Trump. I mean, he's been dragged through federal courts, through regional courts. He's had felonies attached to his name, 34, I believe, at the last count. And everybody was gunning for Donald Trump. And there was, and I'm almost certain the evidence is going to come out on this, that there was at least limited coordination and communication between the federal government and regional, like Manhattan prosecutors, because there were visits to the White House. Yes. I mean, that's on the record. Right. We don't know what was said at those, but they leave the White House and then all of a sudden they launch a case against Donald Trump. So I'm sure something will come out of that about that, or maybe not. Who knows? It probably disappears on Pam Bondi's desk. But there's this whole government to take down Donald Trump in the 4 years he's out of office. And nobody thought, we've got all these Epstein files, let's just leak it. It's unthinkable that such a thing didn't happen if they would be in any way tangentially damaging to Donald J. Trump. I'll give you the final word on this, Graham. Where do you think this is going from now onwards? What surprises me about it, and I think the one thing that everyone really should be, it's a shame this has become politicized, because if the allegations against Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, who's still sitting in a federal prison, despite apparently having trafficked underage girls to nobody, and that's except Jeffrey Epstein. Except Jeffrey
Epstein, yeah. I think that's the big thing that we lose sight of, is that what we should really be wanting to know is who, other than Epstein, was involved in taking advantage of, abusing, or whatever these underage females. Yeah. And that's the tragedy of the story. It's not whether Trump was involved or whether Bill Clinton was involved or who else. That's the politics of it are irrelevant. We're talking about victims here of sex trafficking. Yeah. But apparently, other than Jeffrey Epstein himself, nobody else was involved at all. Which,
allegedly.
And I think that, so where does it go from here? Well, this is going to be the subject of various conspiracy theories for years to come yet, but I don't think we're actually ever going to maybe not get any more answers, or not for several years, until eventually this information probably will be unsealed and released to the public. And by then it may have been sanitized so much that, even then nothing will come out of it.
What is it? back to P.T. Barnum. He said, advertising is to a genuine article what manure is to land. It largely increases the overall product. Graham, we're going to be back with Graham after this short break. Don't go anywhere.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.